Hello, and thank you for joining BlueHornet's 2014 Consumer Views of Email Marketing webinar series. I'm Emily Strasberg, Email Marketing Manager at BlueHornet. Just a few housekeeping items before we get started. Please submit any questions you have during the presentation using your chat window. We will be answering all questions at the end of the webinar. This webinar is being recorded, and we will send out recording and slide presentation for you to download in the next few days. Now let's get started. For the third consecutive year, BlueHornet has surveyed more than 1,000 consumers across the U.S. to better understand their behavior and sentiments about email marketing. Today is the third webinar in our 6-part series, Email Frequency and Relevancy. We'll be taking a dive into the data to provide you with insights and practical recommendations for your email program based on the research. Our speakers today are Jessica Graywall, Client Services Account Director, and Chris Frazier, Senior Director of Client Services. Chris?
Thanks, Emily. Hello, everybody. As Emily mentioned, today's session will be focused on frequency and relevancy. However, to give everyone a quick overview of the survey, which may be a refresher for some of you that have attended our previous sessions, this is BlueHornet's third consecutive year conducting the consumer survey. In addition to the number of folks Emily mentioned that we surveyed for this year's survey, the survey also included folks from the age ranges of 18 to 75. Also, the survey questions this year centered around consumer email habits, frequency and relevancy, which we're talking about today, purchasing behavior, mobile behavior when it comes to how consumers are interacting with email, and social media and text messaging and how that plays into the overall channel.
All right, so let's get started. When marketers are thinking about their email program and come to us for strategic advice, specifically with regard to how to increase KPIs, decrease opt-out rate, and ultimately increase conversion rate, two key considerations are always top of mind: frequency and relevancy. Every subscriber you have in your database is different, and while a batch deployment approach may work for a certain subset of subscribers, brand loyalists, specifically, this may not be the right frequency approach for other types of consumers who are interested in specific content. In our 2012 and 2013 studies, too much frequency and not enough relevancy were the two most likely reasons for a subscriber to opt out. We'll be taking a look at this year's results in a few minutes. In the end, figuring out the mix that best fits your subscriber base will increase all major KPIs while decreasing opt-out rates. As Brian and Kara mentioned during our last webinar, a typical subscriber has over 5 different email addresses. Beginning the relationship using relevant content during the sign-up process will provide you with the best chance to make sure you are acquiring the primary address. While this could be considered a win, your job is not complete. Once you have acquired a subscriber, the real work begins to ensure that you are presenting relevant content to each person. On average, a subscriber typically receives about 115 promotional emails each month. This works out to a typical consumer being subscribed to around 8 to 9 brands, receiving about 13 emails per month from each. That's more than 3 a week from each brand.
That's a lot of email, Jessica. Okay, so we wanted to pull out for today's session, a few examples of campaigns we think stand out in the inbox. We're going to get to relevancy in a little bit, but from a frequency perspective, how do we, when people's inboxes are full every morning, how are messages actually standing out and getting opened and so forth? So let's take a look at some quick examples. Oops emails, as we're seeing right now, are a great opportunity to grab your subscribers' attention. I think everyone's aware that people like to gawk at an accident, and the same principle applies here. Use an error to your advantage, or you could even plan one ahead of time. I think we've all seen, and I think this example we're looking at actually was probably planned ahead of time. But people really, do appreciate when brands express humility. This is all about admitting when you've made a mistake. People, probably chuckle at that, but they also like to just see that you're being honest with them. Adding transparency, mixing in humor to the messaging. People really want to know what's happening, sort of behind the scenes details and perspective. These things all are factors or tactics that we see catch people's attention and make your email or marketers' emails pop out in the inbox. Some brands take a service approach to an error, for example, including an incorrect promo code. If your website goes down, sending a promo code after the promotion is over. These events really offer you another opportunity to control the conversation, foster your relationship with the subscriber, and simply, again, omitting the error with good grace. Subject lines are another thing that obviously are helping emails stand out in the inbox. So in addition to oops emails, having really creative subject lines in general are always going to be a good approach for you. But animated GIFs are another way to attract and keep attention. We also think they're getting more popular, but they're still pretty fresh and they're not overused, one would say. We all know that we have 1 to 2 seconds to kind of get consumers to actually look at our message and take action on it before they move on or hit delete. So having the benefits of motion and adding some uniqueness, which an animated GIF provides in your email, really does give you a few more of these precious seconds to hopefully not only get some brand awareness, but also obviously get the click and get the consumer to your website to hopefully make the conversion. So in this particular example, Blue Label is actually showcasing 5 complete looks without making the reader do anything. So they don't have to scroll down. They don't have to try and look at thumbnails or a catalog layout. So it's almost like a mini fashion show right in the subscriber's inbox.
All right, those are great examples of marketers getting creative with really simple tactics. All right, so how do subscribers actually feel about receiving 115 emails per month? While a little over 50% of the subscribers polled feel that they receive just the right amount of email, a large portion, 44.1%, feel like this is too much. As we know, if a subscriber feels as though they are receiving too many emails, they are more likely to unsubscribe or hit the spam button, which decreases your overall mailable database and can potentially cause other issues such as deliverability problems. As a marketer, how should you interpret this information to modulate your program? Well, subscription is the beginning of your relationship, so we want to make it a positive one. Everybody likes to talk about themselves. Get your subscribers to tell you about themselves and what they want, and drive them to your preference center right out of the gate. So moving forward, we have a couple of examples of preference centers. This is a great example from Pacsun. This form empowers the subscriber to choose the type of message they would like to receive. Pacsun also allows their subscribers to choose between 5 different newsletter subscriptions, which is really important to their brand because each subscription is unique. Here's another example of a preference center from our friends at Edmonds. In this preference center, Edmonds asks for subscriber interests, so clothing, golf, and gift giving to be specific. Both approaches are powerful methods for gathering critical consumer information you can use to segment and tailor content in future messages. Just remember to limit frequency to meet consumer expectations. Now, I know what you all are thinking, and we get these questions all the time around the fact that this looks like a lot of work to manage, but it really is quite manageable once you get the process started. And here are some suggestions that we have. So first off, defining business rules governing dynamic segmentation based on preferences up front. So this is probably number one, as this will help you map out segmentation and act as a check and balance to ensure your business needs are taken care of with the change in targeting. So once you are ready to go live with the new preference center, you have everything in place to just begin and automate your program. Take into consideration the maximum number of opt-ins and design your email calendar to avoid overloading those who may opt in for all. So if you think about the Pacsun Preference Center example we just showed, it's important to think about how many emails a subscriber would receive if they opted into every type of subscription, and have a strategy in place if subscriptions may overlap on a particular day. Lastly, remember that even if you have a preference center, you still can layer in additional content and messages according to business needs. So collecting subscriber preferences, which increases relevancy, ultimately allows you to increase your frequency. Leverage preference information when analyzing your program performance by laying over subscription filters and other interest points. This can help with understanding your best performing channels and allow you to drive your acquisition strategy accordingly. There's a lot of possibilities to derive data from this exercise as well. So ultimately, understanding the correct frequency will lower a brand's chance of subscribers opting out.
That's really interesting. And speaking of opt-outs, an opt-down page is a great tactic for keeping subscribers and providing consumers a real opportunity to adjust their preferred frequency. With an opt-down form, you can give subscribers more options based on how they would like to actually be communicated to. And at this point, what do you really have to lose? Taking a look at the other half of Alan Edmonds' preference form, which we're doing now, the subscriber is directed to this page when they click to unsubscribe. So they actually have two different experiences happening. So when a user clicks on update their preferences through their email template or on their website, they get the preference form versus when they click to unsubscribe, they actually just get directed to this opt-down form. As you can see, Alan Edmonds has the required one-click unsubscribe button, but they also are taking the opportunity to ask their customer if they would be willing to stay in the email program just to receive fewer emails from Alan Edmonds. In this case, just one per week. This represents a significant drop in frequency, but underscores subscriber control, which we all know, subscribers want to be in control of the content they're wanting to receive. That's often how they're kind of dictating the frequency or how relevant messages coming into the inbox are. When we recommend opt-down pages to clients, there is typically some pushback, as Jessica was talking about earlier, because of the extra work, but they add to the overall management of it because of the kind of work they add to the overall management of the program. But while there is some setup involved with preference centers and opt-down pages, this can really be automated into your workflow, and this kind of highlights the points Jessica was making a few minutes ago. But if a subscriber simply must opt out, use the opportunity to learn from them with an exit survey. Remember, if you do lose a subscriber, that's okay. Some email strategists would argue it's actually better to have a subscriber unsubscribe than go dormant. Dormant subscribers cost you money every time you send to them, and they negatively impact your program performance. An optional survey, such as an example, such as the example from Blinds Galore here, allow subscribers to tell brands why they are no longer interested. These surveys provide valuable information back to brands we work with every day. Not only is it great reading for your free time, and you'll definitely get some really entertaining comments, it allows you to identify patterns to optimize against. Are subscribers opting out in a particular time frame from when they subscribed? Is user experience driving them away? The survey may also recover unknown deployment or content issues you had no idea even existed. Use the opportunity to learn and really be interactive with your customers through this approach. Okay, so focusing on relevancy now. At the end of the day, relevancy is core to driving program success. We've talked a lot about frequency. Relevancy is really the other half of that, obviously. So if you're driving highly relevant content, your subscribers might welcome multiple emails a day. For example, alerts from career sites or real estate listings, often 24-hour sales include multiple messages to keep the consumer informed and the sense of urgency high. Shaping consumer perception and driving desired behavior with subject lines, imagery, copy, and offers that appeal to your target segment. So the point here is the more relevant you are, the more accepting consumers are going to be, or your customers are going to be, of the frequency in which you're emailing to them. So speaking of offers, I know that this is a real surprise to all of you. I'm assuming most of you are email marketers on the call today. But for the third year in a row, BlueHornet's consumer survey has found that special offers and discounts are the #1 reason consumers sign up for a brand's email program. But we have good news. This year's survey actually went a layer deeper to help us understand that different types of discounts appeal to different audiences. And Jessica is going to share some more information with you here.
Yep. So by far, my favorite part of this year's consumer survey was taking a look at demographic data compared to sales type. Based on our study, more folks would like to see a certain dollar value off instead of a certain percentage off. I've personally helped many brands test this very thing, and the results are always unique to the brand, the product, and even the time of year that the message is being sent. So, in comparing a percentage discount versus free shipping offer, we found that subscribers between the ages of 18 to 45 prefer a percentage discount, while ages 46 to 75 would prefer free shipping. This is a great test that you can conduct to see if your subscriber base performs the same way, and if they do, you can take the steps to optimizing your program by utilizing content splits when sending your messages. So for these age ranges, enabling this approach will deliver relevant content to each subscriber and likely result in a greater conversion. So this type of age range test can be replicated using other subscriber attributes. Gender is an example. So you may find that gender or region also result in differing discount or content preferences. So, holidays coming up, you've got a lot more email going out at this time, so how about a quick test? Maybe take a holiday message or two and test dollar off versus percentage off. Then, to validate your findings, after the holidays, conduct the same test to check for seasonality. So at the end of the day, continuous testing against the multiple profile data attributes you've collected will help you determine if there is an opportunity to segment and deliver content with higher relevancy. Don't just test your offer, test content, test subject lines, imagery, and copy against various profile attributes that you're collecting, so age, gender, and region. You never know where you may find incremental gains in your database. Lastly, don't forget about acquisition sources. Measuring subscriber performance based on where they signed up will help you hone your acquisition strategy and increase ROI.
Okay, so open and click behavior are also powerful relevancy drivers and can advance your program towards more of a one-to-one content strategy. I think we all recognize that's where things are headed, but the execution of that is pretty complex and sophisticated. So starting to layer in simple tactics and approaches such as open and click behavior can really advance your program towards that approach. Our creative team actually recently signed up for Fossil emails. Fossil delivers a 3-message welcome series, or at least that's what our folks received from Fossil. So hopefully that's the correct experience. The first is a general welcome, as you can see. The second presents product categories by gender, and the third promotes multiple purchase channels. So in general, it looks pretty straightforward. To the typical consumer, they would just think this is, what everybody gets. But there's a lot going on behind the scenes. As Fossil learns more about you based on your click behavior, they change the user experience to reflect what the subscriber is telling them. So they're really listening to their subscribers, which is really key here. So an email to our tester actually clicked on the female product category. And in message 3, Fossil delivered imagery directed towards women instead of the gender-neutral imagery in the previous emails. So this concept, this is kind of a simple application to the concept, but using click behavior to really drive email relevancy can be super important, especially when it comes to, mixing content and preferences that customers have asked for versus what your business requirements may be. Simply combining some of those elements can get you a lot further down the road with engaging customers and leaving a good taste in people's mouth. Okay, so win-back and re-engagement campaigns are also typical kind of well-known relevant campaigns. They acknowledge when the subscriber in their relationship with your brand and lifecycle phase. So they're super relevant, as I mentioned. By arresting your subscribers and using a fresh subject line that acknowledges this slice of your database, with the typical "we've missed you" or "where have you been" or "last chance" type headlines, a marketer can really catch a dormant subscriber's eye and deliver content and offers to entice them to take another look. So this particular campaign that we're looking at from Lydia's Uniforms here had a high subscriber reactivation rate and also had a high conversion rate. So this is, coming from a completely disengaged audience. So this campaign was really successful for them. We partnered with them on kind of developing the concept and messaging around this. So it was really fun to see that they were able to recoup so many subscribers back into their program, as well as really get a lot of incremental revenue off it. So as a next step, the folks at Lydia's will really want to track these re-engaged subscribers over time to monitor their engagement and conversions. It'll be interesting, Jessica, to see if the folks that converted from the re-engagement campaign convert again and again and continue to be engaged in the program, or if this is just a one-time save on their part.
Yeah, completely agree. Another idea is to consider encouraging your subscribers to provide you with more information about them with the Preference Center campaign. So, we showed the Pacsun Preference Center in a previous slide. They sent this campaign, so Pacsun segmented and analyzed their database to identify subscribers with incomplete profiles. The campaign targeted these folks with special rewards for profile completion, delivering a coupon code and a thank you message. The campaign resulted in a nearly 20% lift in completed profiles, enhancing Pacsun's ability to further target, segment, and increase message relevancy. And like the re-engagement campaign you just went over, Chris, this touch helped to prompt a potentially disinterested subscriber base to come back into the fold.
Nice. So we've talked a lot today about the importance of implementing the right frequency for your subscribers and customers, and have seen lots of options for increasing relevancy. But at the end of the day, there's always someone who's not happy. I think we all recognize that. It's really hard to please everybody. So I'm actually, looking at this data, pretty surprised that out of the folks that were surveyed as part of our study this year, I should say, 72% of them say they would actively unsubscribe. But I'd kind of bet cash, Jessica, that actual subscriber rate is much lower, which is another chance to re-engage these folks and prevent the opt-out. In general, I kind of have a gut feeling, and I think when we all interact with the emails that we receive, and granted we're really close to email in general, and we're curious about it, but a lot of people I think just ignore the email, and that's why typically when you're looking at customer or retailers or email databases far and wide, there's a huge percentage of them that are disengaged, and I think that's because people don't actually unsubscribe. They just kind of start ignoring messages, or they get filtered or go into different folders, those kinds of things. So it's kind of interesting to see that subscribers or consumers are reporting that that they actually unsubscribe versus what we actually, I think, all see in terms of how our database makeups and unsubscribe rates flow.
Yeah. All right, so what have we learned from the data that we went over today? We wanted to leave you with a couple key takeaways you and your team can start taking action on today. So first off, find ways to stand out in the inbox. With holiday coming up, finding ways to stand out will be increasingly important because of the amount of emails subscribers will be receiving during November and December. Subject line testing is important, but once a subscriber has opened an email, you'll want to make sure that they stay engaged. The animated gift example Chris went over is a perfect test to gauge click-through rates and overall engagement. Let consumers control their subscriptions and frequency. We went over a couple great examples of preference centers and opt-down pages today. If you don't have one of these up and running now, is the time to definitely get this in place. And remember, if you do lose subscribers, that's okay. Try to find out information about why they are leaving to optimize your email strategy. Lastly, A/B test different types of offers. As mentioned, becoming more relevant to your subscribers will allow you to send more frequently to them. Take the profile information you have for your subscribers and try different discounts, subject lines, and content to see what resonates best for different segments. You may be surprised in what you find out of doing all of this. Right. Before we get to the question and answer section, we wanted to remind you that we still have 3 webinars remaining in this series. Our next webinar will be on October 8th at 10 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time. We'll be going over email-driven purchasing behavior, and it'll be a lot of fun. If you haven't already registered, be sure to sign up using the URL you see here.
Great.
All right. Awesome. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Jessica. We've got a lot of questions coming in, so we're going to go ahead and dive right into those. First, we have a question from Aaron. Chris and Jessica, how should I tailor my welcome series based on acquisition source?
Yeah, so I think when we have a couple of retailers who will tailor it based on acquisition source, so I'll use that example. Let's say you have people signing up organically from your website, you have POS subscribers, and you have different newsletter subscriptions. A great way to do this is to place these folks who are in different acquisition sources into different segments or tag them and have, special welcome messages. So you could have a default, welcome to the program message, but for POS, it's, thank you for visiting. So tailoring your message in your welcome series will provide more relevant content to the subscriber and start the relationship off right. Alternatively, this also gives you the ability to take a look at stats and analytics based on how these subscribers came into your program. So this will tell you, where are your most profitable subscribers at the very beginning, looking at conversion rates, as well as how they're engaging. So you may find that, subscribers who signed up in stores may not engage as much as subscribers who are signing up online. So it'll kind of help you focus your energy and your resources into optimizing certain areas and let you know where your winners are.
Awesome, thanks. All right, we have a question from Andrea regarding preference centers. Do you typically show your customers the full preference center as soon as they sign up on your site, or do you encourage them to fill it out as part of your welcome email so you're not overwhelming them as they sign up?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. So there's obviously marketers all over the place doing different things with this. So we have customers and have seen other programs that aren't customers that do it both ways. So it's obviously depending on the size of your preference form. The Pacsun one obviously had a lot more detail to it than what the Edmonds one did. So I might choose or recommend different strategies there. We didn't get into it today so much, but progressive profiling has become really popular. So instead of asking someone to fill out an entire preference form at once, it's about asking them one question at a time and kind of either through your welcome series, which is a great place to get some basic details or really, the details you really need to give the customer a great experience. But also as you go into your normal promotional messages and other content-driven messages, serving a kind of click-based question and Q&A in those messages based on what information you have or don't have in the preference center for that specific subscriber can be a really good tactic to kind of gain the intelligence about subscribers over time. So getting back to your question, I think there's a lot of brands that say fill out your preferences, but there's also a lot of brands that just ask people for a couple of key pieces of information up front and then try to get more information over time.
Yeah, I think you want to make sure, you don't want to create an abandonment problem, a sign-up form abandonment problem, and asking for too much information can definitely do that. So, asking for information that'll allow you, we just talked about sending a different welcome message based on sign-up. So if that information will allow you to do that, I think that's fair game. But I also think, as part of that question, putting a preference center email into a welcome series is very relevant because you're asking them to tell you about themselves and what they'd like to see so you can make the experience more relevant for them.
Cool. All right, so we have a few questions about animated GIFs. Lauren wants to know how effective they are across email browsers outside of Gmail, like Outlook. And then on the heels of that, we have some questions about how they display across clients. I know that there's some differences there. So
yeah. So in full disclosure, Jessica and I are not email creative coders. So those are, happy to connect you with one of our design folks and have a one-on-one conversation for anybody that's interested in that. Perhaps we could even do a webinar on animated GIFs specifically. But I think Outlook is the biggest kind of exception to animated GIFs. That's the one place that you can pretty much count on animated GIFs not working. And so in that case, there's usually a default image that will show. So it's still an okay or good user experience. It's just not animated. But all the web-based ESPs are pretty, or ISPs, I should say, are pretty good. Even on phones, it's pretty good. There's a couple exceptions out there, but for the most part, it's pretty well adopted.
Yeah, completely agree.
Awesome. All right, so we have a question regarding kind of the win-back campaign that we talked about. How should you determine what your dormant subscribers are? Is it no opens in 30 days, 60 days? How do you decide that threshold?
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. I think that there are two different campaigns to a re-engagement. I think it can be classified differently. I think some people will take re-engagement and use an actual engagement metric. So opens in the last 6 months, I'd say is a default value that we'll do. But others will take it, they may be engaging, but they're not purchasing or they're not, clicking and going onto their site, and they'll do a different campaign there. So I think either way can be done. The most popular one that I believe we see is similar to the examples that we've shown where people just have not engaged in the email program. So it's presenting different content, resting the subscribers for a little bit, changing the pattern in which you're sending, and placing a very different subject line with an enticing offer to try and get those people to re-engage and convert.
Yeah, and I would just add that it's really important to not only look at the email engagement, which is probably, several years ago that was kind of the key driver at re-engagement program, but also as brands and companies have migrated to more omni-channel style marketing, CRM-based personas and these kinds of things, looking at the entire picture is extremely important. So if somebody's going into your store and buying things consistently, they're just not engaging with your email program, it's probably not going to come across very well if you send them a message saying, where have you been? So a couple years ago, I was working with a retailer, and they actually, we've found, I think, 1.5 million people that hadn't engaged in their email program in the last year. So we were planning out this. Well, we actually partnered with them to go look at conversion data and found that 1.5 million unengaged subscriber base actually had spent $4 or $5 million with them in the last year. So there was actually a lot of revenue tied to those people. They just weren't engaging with the email program. So we kind of stepped back and took another look at how that would be approached. I think one final point on that is looking at what do you typically expect from the cycle that your customer goes through based on the product you have. So if you have a retail based product, you might expect someone to buy from you every couple of months versus a hospitality like a hotel company may only expect someone to stay with them once a year. So looking at kind of the typical cycle you would expect from somebody can also help and be a really important component of when you're kind of pushing people to re-engage with you or deciding to drop them off. Those are all important components to include.
Cool. All right, and then on the tail of that, we have a question from Jeff regarding re-engagement campaigns as well. Are there best practices for when to offer a discount in a re-engagement or win-back series? Would it be maybe in the first email or the third? Are there best practices around that, or what are your guys?
I'd say the best practice is, typically we see a campaign, a re-engagement campaign, lasting for 2 to 3 emails. And the best, your last final ditch effort offer is usually in the third one. So you get progressively higher with your discounts going on. So I'd say the third email is probably, the last ditch effort before you consider them not engaged is when you would present your final offer. So having a very good subject line, something that's different than what they've seen from your brand, along with an offer that they may not have seen, with any of your promotional emails or anything like that.
I think this is a great opportunity to test. So we talked a little bit about testing earlier today, but this is the kind of thing where I kind of sit on the fence. Like you could take the approach of giving somebody a discount up front as a limited time offer and then back away, or not give them an offer and see if you can get them to re-engage without spending money on them essentially, and then if they don't, then start discounting them. So I think testing it both ways can be really interesting. And also the types of discounts. So we looked at earlier, the data of younger generations prefer dollars off or a percentage off versus people of older generations just prefer free shipping. So testing the type of discount where people really find value in those kinds of things could be extremely helpful in kind of driving your long-term strategy.
And then Evan has a question about testing. Speaking of that, how often should you conduct testing on your messages?
Every time you send a message. No, I'm a believer that not doing at least one test on a message is a lost opportunity. So as frequently as you can, because like I said, working with brands, we see a lot of testing. Subject line, content testing. And, sometimes there's very little difference, but then occasionally when you would at least expect it, you see, a double conversion rate, or you see, a 5% higher open rate. So you just really never know. So, at the end of the day, I think subject lines are pretty easy to test. So at least have, a subject line test in there if you don't have the time to get anything else kind of worked out with segmenting and creating additional content.
Yeah, there's really no excuse to at least test the subject line every time you send.
Cool. Awesome. All right, we have a question from April. If your target audience is survey fatigued, what other options do you use to capture what your audience needs?
So survey fatigued in regard to sending surveys, maybe, if we go down that road?
Or maybe capturing user preferences from surveys progressive.
Yeah, I think Chris alluded to progressive profiling. So instead of making it, a full-on survey where they're, directed to an additional page or directed to your site, maybe it's, a call to action button like progressive profiling, which is a banner within the email where, it looks just like the email. There's additional content that's really the main focus of the email, but asking those questions within the email so that if they click, it is, an engagement metric for you. It's a call to action. They go on your site, but it also allows you to get the data that you need in the back end.
And then we have a question, last question for today regarding opt-down forms and best practices. So what can you recommend including on an opt-down form to reduce the opt-out rate? Is it subscription frequency? What would you recommend?
I think it could be a combination of both. As Chris alluded to, these people have already clicked unsubscribe. So, you still want to remain compliant with the one-click unsubscribe, but if you're able to manage, cadence differentiations or even subscription differentiations, that may save your subscribers. So, limiting them to a couple emails per month, maybe one per week, may be a change in strategy, but if you think about it, you'll be losing those subscribers anyway, so might as well keep them around for one email per week versus not in your program at all, and it may make them a little bit happier. And yeah.
Awesome. Well, I think that's all we have time for today. Thank you, Chris and Jessica, and thank you, everyone, for joining us. If you have any other questions that we didn't answer in today's webinar, feel free to email us at bluehornetcommunications@bluehornet.com. As a reminder, we will be sending out the recording of this webinar as well as the slides that were presented today in the next couple of days. Just a reminder, there are 3 more webinars in our series. If you haven't registered for them yet, you can do so by going to resources.bluehornet.com/consumerviews. Our next webinar is on Wednesday, October 8th at 10 a.m. Pacific. We'll be digging into consumer purchasing behavior as it relates to email. Thank you again for joining us, and enjoy the rest of your week.